Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have about 5 minutes until the meeting starts. Just hold tight and we'll make sure we can get everybody in who wants to join us. Got another minute to go. We'll give it a few minutes to make sure we get everybody who wants to join us into the session, and we'll get started. All right, we have hit our 6 o'clock mark. We're at about 50 participants right now. Let's see, we're growing still, so we'll give it a few more seconds.
Mr. Arian, will you mention a little bit about making sure that if they have questions, I know you've already put in the chat, but yeah.
I guess we can start with that while people join in. So pretty open kind of meeting. If you would like to ask questions throughout, feel free. Kind of voice if there's a natural break, or if you want to add comment or questions in the chat window, you could do that. We will address them as they come, when it matches up with the section that we're covering. If there's some broad questions you want answered at the end, we may just do a little Q&A at the end. You can wait. Pretty flexible on our end. We do ask that you do keep your mics muted. It helps with that feedback in the background as we're talking. So just everybody can get the same information and doesn't have to struggle with that. Yeah, just we're kind of here for you guys. We'll make it work. Whatever you guys need, just let us know. And I'll let Mr. Birch take it away and kind of introduce what our goal is with our fall parent meeting.
Okay, and Mr. Arian, if you'd share the meeting agenda, that would be good. I just want to clarify, we have a lot of things we touch base on in our fall parent meeting, sort of the state of the union and where we're at, what kind of things we're doing in our schools, all those kinds of things. But also with this year being a little bit different than most, there is a section in there. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit about the impact of the pandemic, what's next, and a question and answer period, as Mr. Arian already mentioned. So we're going to go through some things. We're going to hit some things real lightly, try to get through some information, some informational type items, and then we'll have some time for discussion and some things as we move forward. So again, as I would mention, make sure that if you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll be trying to monitor that to make sure that that we can answer those. If not, during our presentation, we'll definitely have some time at the end of the presentation. So we appreciate you being with us tonight. Great turnout, and we're excited to give you some information about some of the things we're doing. Real quick, I just want to give you some updates about us a little bit and where we're at right now as we set at the beginning of September. In September, we have about 1270, give or take a few, since our enrollment count on the 9th of September. You can see by grade level there, our elementary numbers, our K through 3 numbers are pretty low as far as kids in grade levels. Our first big bump is in 5th grade with 103 students, 6th grade with 108, drop off a bit again, and then we have pretty big numbers 8th grade through 12th grade. So as we look at that, we have a head count of 1270. That includes our preschoolers, obviously, and our equivalent, our FTEs are 1202. And you might say, why does that not match up? What we get funded for is 1,202 students. That's based on preschool. Kids get backed out, they're not funded. And then if our kids are not in a full-time high school schedule, based on they may be in a running start situation, or they may be doing something else, then they get backed out too. So, and if we had kids along the way that may be a part-time student with us. So 1,270 is what we have on our books as a head count. We're going to share some enrollment numbers with you, some trends in a few moments. So Mr. Arian is going to take away a little bit about some of the things where our numbers were as we ended last year.
So, I'm sorry, Doug, you're asking me to do the 1920
Just real
stuff?
quick, give them I mean, you don't have to read to them all those
right,
things.
I want to, you can look this up on OSPI. It's really the trend numbers from last year. We're roughly 50-50 when our male-female population. Race and ethnicity is, our Hispanic Latino group is our largest group, followed by the group that identifies as white. And then we have some other ethnicities that kind of follow through with some low numbers. So, over the past 10 years, there's pretty steady with the group numbers that we've had here. You can see our low income rate. That might surprise some of you, but we are roughly around 60% across the district, which does provide us with some extra support from the state level. Gives us some opportunities that we can do with our students at we might not have gotten with other accounts. So it's good and bad in terms of the way we look at what that provides our students. And you know, it's just the status of where we're at with our community. Our English learners were roughly at about 11% who identify as their primary language at home being something other than English. And when we qualify those students in that program, there's a measurement system with their reading, writing, and speaking abilities to accomplish the English language. So we're working roughly with 11% of our students to help support their development of language. Those are some of our biggest groups, and probably one group that you hear a lot more about are students with disability. That's another large group, and we're roughly at 12% with that population. So some of our population, 12% roughly has a disability that does impede their learning ability. So those are some of our demographics, kind of make up who we are and really drive some of the programs that we offer. You can see with our report card, there's some good trends going on there. High rate of attendance, high rate of graduation, on track, numbers are good. What we're going to try to beef up is that 45% they're completing a dual credit course. Although it looks like it's low at 45%, what we're looking at there is half of our students at the high school are in dual credit, meaning they're trying to earn some college credit while they're earning high school credit. I think that's something to be celebrated. Of course, we want that to be 100%, and we're going to work our dang tails off to get there. And then you can see our readiness skills. That's an area that we, as a community, have to do something about. We have roughly 23% of our kindergartners ready in all the areas that it takes to do well in school as they enter. So, as a community, if we can build some of our prerequisite programs, or excuse me, not prerequisite programs, but like a preschool program, or if we can work with some of our daycare facilities, those are the things that will help build up that kindergarten readiness. So these are some things that just tell us what's going on in the district, and really the programs that we develop based on who our students are. This is where it all generates from.
A little bit about our staffing. I just want you to know, and we're going to spend not very much time at all on this, but we are a school district that has five board members, which is typical. Very few districts have more than that unless they're a combined district. We have 152 employees, 61 classified employees, 83 certificated, and you can see what that entails. We have our teachers, average years of teaching experience are just a little over 15.1. Over 61% of our teachers have a master's degree or higher. So again, those are just figures to give to you. We have 8 administrative employees, myself, assistant superintendent, Mr. Urian, and principals and assistant principals, athletic director, that make up that group. We have other folks in that mix too. When we do have sports on a normal basis, we have 35 plus coaches that work in our district. We have many substitute employees, both certificated and classified, as well as support for students and with outside agencies. So that's just a little bit about staffing and where we sit with our staffing numbers this school year.
Hey, Doug, I thought it was interesting when you brought up the change in our average years for our teaching staff based on some retirements. You might want to share that.
Yeah, I believe last year we were maybe, it doesn't sound like a lot, but I think we averaged about close to 18 years of teaching experience. But
she's not going to school though.
We had a large number of retirements last year in our district. I mean, overall we had, I think, close to 7 teaching positions that retired. And it seemed like when we hired back, we got a lot of younger teachers. So our average years of teaching experience went down considerably in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
And I told you I would share a little bit about enrollment trends. I just want you to see this. This is basically a 10-year window. And I want you to look at the head count. It doesn't really matter which side you look at. We get funded on the right side on the full-time equivalent, as I've mentioned, but you can see, and as we go through that, as the years have went on, our enrollment trends have really just declined, and don't have a great explanation for that other than we've looked at our community, our housing, those kinds of things. We've looked at different trends in the economy, those kinds of things too. But if you look right now, as far as, and when it says no preschool, that means the preschool kiddos are not figured into that head count. on the left there, because we did start preschool in 16, 17. But what I would tell you is if you look at the numbers on the right and really look at that, where we're at today, and today could be an exception based on the pandemic potentially, but I don't know if that's true. Our numbers are just, and the smaller grade levels are just low at this time. And if you look there, that's a concerning trend because we get funded based on our full-time equivalency. So those are things we always keep an eye on. I've had people ask me, well, you used to let more out of district kids in. That's not true. Our percentages are similar, and those kinds of things. So it's just one of those things that, sometimes we don't necessarily have a great explanation for, other than the last 2 to 3 years, our numbers of our incoming students have been extremely low. At one time, we used to average about 100 kids per grade level, which would be fairly typical or more. And if you saw those numbers I shared with you early on, most of those numbers of 100 or more were at the upper grades, which is, again, fairly typical. And our lower numbers are, the lower grades and the elementary primary grades.
And Doug kind of mentioned this. We do speculate. You look at housing prices in Zilla is pretty high. Hard for a new young family to obtain a home without renting. And then you look at construction; it's very minimal around here. So there's not a lot of new housing going in to build up our community. And then it's a pretty good community to stay in. And once you raise your children and they go off and do their thing, we see a lot of our families, the families staying around and not opening up new housing for those families. So some things we've speculated on in regard to that. So I'll start with this, and Doug's going to chime in as well. We worked with our board a couple of years ago to establish some priorities, looking at how we're moving ahead and keeping up with kind of the trends of education. And one thing that Doug and I and the administrative team, along with our teachers, we don't want to play catch up to other districts. We want to lead. We've been a leader as far as a small community school district for years. And so we wanted to kind of maintain that and what was special about Zilla and offering things that are unique to our students and our families. So we really landed on 3 priority areas that the board felt was important to maintain, kind of that edge that we provide our students. And the first is meeting and exceeding student performance measures. So realistically, we're looking at opportunities to have our students perform well on the state assessments. Now, there is give and take to this. We don't buy into everything's relied on what happens in the state assessment. We know what our teachers provide is pretty excellent in terms of building good citizens, learning how to work with others. Those are a lot of other important aspects. But as the state views us as report cards go out about how schools are performing, we do have a measurement system, and we typically have done pretty well when you look at it across the state. And this doesn't just fall in line with reading, writing, and math. We do have the language proficiency areas that we work on, and all those other, like the getting our students ready for post-secondary, getting their SAT, ACT. We at one point, our students who graduating for high school, they required less support in colleges with their mathematics and ELA courses. They were able to move on to college level classes because our high school was able to prepare them for what's ahead. So a lot of good things have happened, and we want to maintain that. 3 areas that we felt we could really push on was the professional development and creating an opportunity for staff to work together in professional learning communities. That why would we have to add that? Why would we have to beef that up? Doug noted that 7 individuals retired from our district last year. You can't rely on people to continue providing this level of support for our students when they're going to move on. We're going to have people with just natural attrition move on with their lives, and then we're going to bring in new folks. And what we want to do is we want to maintain what we've provided. So we're asking our staff to collaborate, share with each other, share best practice, know how to teach our students, and strategize how to do it really, really well. And so we want to create a system in our schools that creates that ongoing collaboration. So if you ever hear of PLCs or professional learning communities, that's really what we're focused on. And we're trying to really give professional development. Really, we're teaching our staff how to do that well and how to make this thing cyclical and systematic. The other piece is emphasizing early childhood education. Again, 5 years ago, you saw the trend with enrollment, and Doug indicated that, preschool wasn't counted in our counts. That was the first time we offered preschool. So we've had that for 5 years. We have a group of roughly 25 to 30 students that are involved. We need to beef that up. How do we make it robust? How do we add on? You'll hear something about transitional kindergarten later on in this presentation. That's another avenue to support that early childhood education and get kindergarten readiness up from that low percentage. And then you have standards, curriculum, and assessment. We've got to focus in on those areas. I think we're always analyzing our curriculum. We're addressing the standards and how they relate, making sure we're actually teaching what we should teach. That's an ongoing process. It's not something that we identify, day one of our teaching career or our school year, and we leave it alone. We actually continually review the standards and make sure our curriculum is matching up. I'm going to spend a little time on assessment. We did talk about that we don't put all our eggs in that basket. It is an important way for us to kind of understand how things are going. Last year, there was no assessment system with the pandemic, the closure that led to distance learning 1.0. So we don't have data to go off of on how we did last year. That's just situational, and that's okay. Right now, it's on the docket to be completed this year. I think the state, is kind of waiting to see what happens with distance learning and how it evolves back into the traditional model. If measuring our students' performance is fair, is adequate, then we'll have to approach that at that time. Doug, you got the second bullet there.
Yes, and another big priority of our board of directors is maintaining financial stability, and that goes without saying. We're a small district. We don't get some of the funds that other districts around us get based on our different programs. Even though, as Mr. Arian mentioned earlier, we do get supplemented with some of our programs, but at the same time, we really have to be fiscally smart in how we plan, how we prepare, how we create a budget year to year, and that big piece goes into professional development for staff, as Justin mentioned, and it goes into support, supplemental materials, all those kinds of things that we do. But one of the big things that our board of directors has been very adamant about, if you will, is facility planning. And as you know, we're about ready, crossing our fingers, and we'll talk a little bit about that too, is we're about ready to finish a high school project that's been in the works for 3+ years, and that is going to be something that we'll be proud of and be glad it's over with too by the time we're done with it. But and it's something that we always do. We're always going to look at our facilities, even if it's just upgrading our facilities and not in a big bond project. It is something that we try to do, whether it be safety and security, if it is if it's technology that we're going to talk about here in a minute. Those kinds of things are all things that are very important to our board and very important to us as we plan and prepare to move ahead, not just with facility projects, but day-to-day operations in our district. So those are things that we continue to monitor. We take a lot of input, but we also look at the direction we go, and we try to maximize our funding. We really do. We're going to maximize our funding that we do get, be fiscally sound. That's on me to be fiscally sound as a district and provide support for our students and services for our students that are appropriate. So with that, it sort of takes us into technology. I'm just going to say a couple things about technology. Justin will chime in here too. I want to tell you that one of the things we always look at is updating resources for students and staff. And we're going to have a quick piece tonight that we're going to talk to you about some of the things we've done with technology and currently, but also in the past few years. And we've got an excellent IT director, Mr. Howard, who works hard to plan and keep us up to date. We're going to try to, as Justin mentioned earlier, again, continue to push our staff instructionally, and always are going to support safety and security, whether it be different types of protocols that we're going to use, if it's cameras, if it's the way we enter buildings, if it's access control, whatever it may be. We're always going to continue to keep that as an important factor for the district also.
And I'll just touch base on two of the more of the academic or curricular components of forward thinking. So ultimately what we've looked at the past year is how do we beef up the computer science? If you can imagine your children and what they're working through to access their learning now, It's only an indicator of what their future careers may hold. Being able to utilize technology, interact with technology, so that they can manipulate situations and tasks to do them efficiently. That's most likely going to be the work environment to some capacity as they move into the workforce. I can't remember the exact number, but a very large number of the jobs that our children will participate in as adults are not even created yet. They're not even developed yet because things evolve so fast. So we're trying to create a system of computer science education, starting all the way from our preschools program all up to our high school. One of the greatest successes we've had in most recent years has been a TILS program where we have high school students interacting day to day with some of the leaders in the world, really, in the field of computer science. You know, Boeing, Microsoft. There's just people coming in and working with our students to get to interact almost daily with those people. So how do we jump from, you know, textbook, paper, pencil type activities all the way to that type of environment where students are interacting at that high level? Well, we want to make it more seamless. We want to build those skills up. At the middle level, we've got a lot of tech opportunities that have been integrated the last couple of years. So we're beefing it up as we go, but we're really looking at, you know, ground level. How do we build it from the elementary all the way up, make it real systematic, so students have a lot of different experiences in that field with programming, simple robots, fun things like that. Just literally looking at how you build a code with sequence of numbers and letters, and just trying a different way of thinking about learning and doing. So that's been fun. You can see more to come with that. If you've been on Schoology with your children, you might have seen an icon called learning.com. There's some components in there that as we move through the school year, your children may interact with a little more. So kind of fun area that we're further developing, more for our elementary that we need to further develop, but it's more to come. The other piece is the innovative instructional practices. We've been looking at blended learning opportunities for our students. How do you mix tech, interaction with through the internet with your teachers to access curriculum, to submit your assignments? So at the middle level, they started with Amplify ELA. That was kind of our first real big curricular purchase that really integrated the blended approach. Well, lo and behold, here we hit distance learning. Everything is blended at this point in time. Our students and staff have been inundated in a very short time with how to engage in this world. What we hope to gain from this opportunity is something that's sustainable. You know, we want to incorporate some of these strategies. Although it's hard, although it's different and new, we need to create a system that can maintain that type of interaction for our students and for our staff. One fun area that we're exploring more and more is a flipped classroom, where students can interact with something maybe digitally that through Schoology or have a link so they can preview some sort of learning objective. They learn about it, they watch it on their own, and then they move into the classroom, and right away they can engage in learning with that pre-existing knowledge that they gain. So we're just trying to use the tech and the innovation with what we're trying to offer, and we want to kind of push it and keep it going. That's how we can keep ahead, and how we can provide unique opportunities for a small district and a small community.
And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because, you know, just for the sake of time, but new to the district this year, you know, there's some staffing in there that we've already talked about, shows you where we hired our teachers at, our specialists, our classified folks, movement of teachers. We have 8 staff members in new positions or roles this year. Curriculum, Justin just mentioned Schoology for the distance learning piece, computer science, he's talked about learning.com. Technology, we're going to hit on a little bit later. I will tell you that right now, currently, we have a intermediate school playground project that is almost complete. Mr. Aaron did a good job of working with the grant, getting some outside funds to get that, and getting our playground at the intermediate school updated. Then the middle school outside structure, I think Mr. Charbonneau is on, but I think we're working on maybe getting some more paint on it. But other than that, that was through a grant last spring, got delayed a little bit to the summer based on the pandemic, but that is up at the middle school. And then the high school project, which I've already mentioned, but we do have substantial completion pretty close to substantial completion right now. We do have temporary occupancy in that building, and we're trying to get that thing done. So at some point we can get students back there soon. But it is going to be a beautiful facility. I think most will, if you haven't been in the building, once we get the opportunity to share that building, we'll be glad to do that. It's real close, fine-tuning some of the things on the inside, obviously, and the exterior is not quite finished, but we're hoping, crossing our fingers, that we're working real close to completion soon.
State and federal programs. Every year, it's important to review some of these programs that we offer our students in the district. One, we want to make sure parents are kind of have an insight to what's being provided. And then if you want input, if you have further questions after this presentation or during this presentation, you feel free to put it in the chat. You can email Doug or myself with questions in regard to that, or you can give me a call and we can talk through some of the programs that we do offer. But I'll give a brief synopsis of these programs and then tell how it kind of impacts our community, or our schools. So Title I Part C is this program that ultimately can support all learners who are struggling in the school system. It's a federal funded program that provides a good amount of funds to the district to kind of intervene and help students. As a district, we actually choose to utilize that program at our elementary schools, our Hilton Elementary and Zilla Intermediate, and we consider ourselves school-wide Title I schools. What that allows us to do, because our poverty rate is at such a rate, it allows us to work with all students, regardless of if they're excelling or not. We just get to work with all students to come and help support the learning process. So we hire staff out of Title I programs. Usually it's our para-educators to help support our students on an ongoing basis. We also are able to provide funding for preschool. So we fund part of our preschool program out of Title I. So that's it's helping those who struggle in general. Since we're at a poverty rate, we're allowed to do a school-wide approach, and we definitely hit up our preschool, and we hire some staffing out of those funds. We have Title I Part C. That's actually really geared towards our migrant students. So students who or families move within the last 3 years for any job reason, then they're considered a migrant student, or the family is considered migrant. There are some specific duties that we have as a district, really tracking how they're doing. As you can imagine, if a student has to move multiple times due to family need, there may be a bit of a learning curve in terms of standards lining up, the instructional practices lining up, curriculum lining up. So there's a system in place to help those students who have to move with their family to kind of support that process. A lot of outreach is done. We hired 2 employees really that are kind of coaches and guidance counselors in a way that work with those students. We do outreach to teachers to make sure those students are getting what they need. We do a lot of college visits. We do a lot of those kind of more of the high school counseling type pieces with students in program. We also have some events where we bring in parents of those students. And we kind of teach them about our school district. If they haven't been in our school district for very long due to the moves, let's teach them. Let's sit down and actually talk to them about what we provide. So pretty good, just an outreach program for those families in our district. Then we have the Learning Assistance Program, and often referred to as LAP. We also qualify for this program because of our low-income situation. We get a chunk of money, and really this is really geared towards students who are struggling. So this is the way that Mr. Bird's kind of referred to us as maximizing some of our money. What we do is we braid our Title I funds and our LAP funds to kind of create a robust program for students who are struggling, but it also allows us to work with every kid across those 2 grade levels. But those 2 buildings, but LAP actually extends to the middle school and the high school. We don't have Title I up there at those 2 buildings. So LAP kind of replaces the need for the Title I services. So although, we have a central focus, at our elementaries for all these services, but it actually does extend throughout the grade levels. One of the greatest probably benefits to being a LAP qualified schools, we've actually qualified for additional funds by building we've been bringing in roughly, well, depending on the school, $100,000 per school. Mr. Charbonneau at the middle school has to struggle with about 60,000, 50,000 at times, but we're able to do a lot more. We've hired additional staff to help kids. We've got additional resources to help students. We've provided more time after school programs, tutoring services, before school programs through those lab high poverty dollars. So real big benefit to the district and to participate in these programs. Title III, it also gets braided in with bilingual program, but it's helping students who are struggling with the proficiency of the English language. So we're helping those students through specific strategies and tasks to help them gain proficiency in English. We've talked about special education before in the presentation. Students with having a disability that impedes their learning, we create individual programs for those students. We roughly have about 140 students in program, and we support them on a wide variety of ways. It's really individualized and unique based on the student's specific needs. Kind of a neat deal. And then our last program I'll talk about is the highly capable program. Special ed, maybe on one end of the spectrum, kids struggling, have something as a barrier to reaching their full potential with learning. We can overcome those things. Highly capable is they need more. They need to be pushed. They need extensions. So we have about 40 students in that program that we work and kind of coach along the way with their teachers. How do you extend learning opportunities in the classroom? How do we give them a little bit extra? How do we push them? So students in that program really do benefit. And we've made some major changes in literally all of these programs over the last 5 years. We've made major changes across the district that we think are benefiting our students. We've seen the data from those state assessments I've talked about that have indicated things have been improving. So we want to kind of maintain these programs and see how far we can get. And we're always tweaking along the way, but we kind of keep those fundamental pieces intact so we can continue to grow our students to that next level.
Future plans for programs and facilities. I will tell you that we were ready to move as you probably recall, many of you, if you were involved last year, we were ready to move our third graders to the intermediate school and our sixth graders to the middle school in a transition to begin this school year. But when March hit and the pandemic was in front of us, we made a conscious decision with the board to not knowing how we were going to start school this fall. We just felt like it wouldn't be a positive move. We are still planning on moving forward for the 21-22 school year. So that is our focus. We will move our third graders, and we've went through all those reasons. We've put that out there in the community the last few years. It's been something the district has planned for quite a while. We will continue to try to make that happen for the next school year. Alternative program, ZAP, which is now housed across from our intermediate school, will be moving up to the high school site. And we've expanded some classroom space at the high school under the new project. And we have an area there that will be conducive for them, that we designed in the scope of the project, and also allows our alternative program students the opportunity to be involved in programs, which they already are, to coincide with the high school schedule also. So that is one good thing that will happen. That is going to be an easy transition. We still have some plans for that space at the intermediate school, across from the intermediate school, and we're working on that. Transitional kindergarten. We did, if you were in our meetings last year, we talked a lot about this. This was something else we were going to look at, a new program from the state that is funded for students that aren't yet 5. So very similar to a preschool program, but called transitional kindergarten. There are a lot of different facets to it, but one of the things that we may be prepared to do if the funding is still there and we can do it efficiently and effectively, we will try to look at that and take a good strong look, because as we've already mentioned, I think Justin mentioned earlier, and we've talked a little bit about, one of the big priorities of the board is early learning, and this is another way to get more kids prepared, that we can get prepared for kindergarten and beyond. So that's important. Facility planning is not going away, even though we may be at a capacity with our debt capacity at this time on our bonds. in 2024, the elementary school, I think that will be the time that our elementary school will fall off and we'll be done with that, paying off that bond. Obviously, we have the high school bond that we're just like we've been talking about that project. So we wouldn't go out for any bond. We don't really have the bonding capacity to do anything for buildings until after that at the earliest. Levies are always something that we just passed a levy in February of 2020, which is for tax years, the 2021 and 2022. And so those are things our board has traditionally went with 2-year levies. There have been some changes in those rules, but we would look again to we have to run another educational programs and operations levy, and we would do that at the beginning in February of 2021. So we would do that for the other, or excuse me, 2022 for the other years. So every 2 years we go back for levies. It's like the old maintenance and operations levy that now is referred to as educational programs and operations, but things that all districts have to plan for. And as we progress, again, that's why we talk about enrollment trends and some of those things. What are our capacity? What's our bonding capacity in our district? What are our needs? Obviously the elementary school and the high school will be our newest buildings. The middle school is not new anymore, but still in really, really good shape. And obviously the next plan or the next facility that we really need to take a good look at is our intermediate school. We know that. Student school safety, this is never going to go away. Just because we haven't had kids on campuses doesn't mean we don't think about this all the time. Our communication systems, well, what are the protocols and the procedures in place that we have, how we notify parents on issues, how do we communicate, policies and procedures that we adopt from our state, facility security. This is important. We've invested a lot of monies in the past years on cameras, on security cameras, on access control in all buildings. And when the high school project is done, you'll see that loud and clear that will be a state-of-the-art building with security, numerous cameras, numerous access control areas, all those kinds of things. We still have a school resource officer involved in outreach at this time, but that's something that loud and clear our community has supported. We are involved with our local ESD, the SOC, the School Safety Operations and Coordination Center. We're involved in that. We're involved in RESD 105 is one of the leaders in our state when it comes to school safety and some of the focus that they put forth on that. We are very involved with them on that. And then we also have our safety committee. This will be year 3. We will meet in October. We usually meet 2 times a year. Obviously, the nature of those meetings are a little different if we don't have kids on campus, but we have administrators involved. We have our local law enforcement. We have a local PD representative, chief, fire chief, and then numerous community members. And that was something that came out of our some concerns that our community members had a few years ago, and we've addressed that. And we have a good group of folks that are working and meeting a few times a year on specific issues about student and school safety for the Zillow School District.
Doug, I will mention too that we did upgrade some of our software that on the end of security, checking for security issues within our filtering system. So we monitor really closely what our students are doing online, especially really important when we're handing out a lot of devices to use and giving that access control during the day and outside of what we consider the school day. Not having direct contact with our students, we kind of want to monitor how things are going. So we're able to see what students are doing on their end and kind of look for any potential threats to them and then within those groups. So an upgrade, it's a product called Aristotle, and our tech department made that suggestion. We upgraded that last year. Technology in the ZSD, do you want to handle that one too, Mr. Burge?
Sure, I would be glad to. I just want to give you sort of an idea. We mentioned this already, and again, I'll spend a lot of time on it, but we purchased 6 new mobile labs. You can see where they were going to, what buildings they were going to, because we had to put out more devices and things like that. We have 28 total mobile cart labs in the school district, 11 computer labs, non-mobile devices in buildings. You'll see that, but I want you to sort of focus in on the distance learning piece, because we have deployed 855 devices at this time to students. And if you think about that, what was the number I gave you earlier? 1270, I think it was, as our head count. If you think about that for a minute, we've deployed a significant amount of devices to students at this point. Our tech department has worked extremely hard setting up email accounts for students in grades 6 through 12. Just to let you know, our tech help desk gets about 15 calls a day where they're giving assistance to and support to our students and families. And then we also purchased, and this is just a little bit of the things we purchased, but 80 webcams and microphones deployed for staff, some green screens, some other things that we've tried to make the experience for staff better to provide services, distance learning services for students. So that's really technology in a quick nutshell, but I will tell you that really made a commitment to try to make sure that as one of those board priorities was set forth for us to have, we are not what you would consider a one-to-one district, but honestly, we really probably are right there when you think about all the things. And when you get a chance to get in the new high school, when it's complete, you're going to see a lot of technology in that building. You're going to see focuses on a lot more technology, even at the middle school. Mr. Charbonneau has done a fine job of getting tech, like Mr. Arian mentioned earlier, blended learning approach with a lot of technology, and in all of our buildings. I think you've seen that our administrators have done a great job of making that important, and again, maximizing those funds to help put tech in our students' hands.
Reminder, if you do have your mic on, if you could mute it, please. Thank you. COVID impacts, Mr. Burge.
In the spring, you know, we were under a we didn't really know. I mean, I don't think any of us knew on March 13th when we were sitting here with administrators that weekend that we were not going to be back in school at some point. No one really knew at that time. My colleagues didn't really know. Our superintendents were really trying to still plan and put together something, and it was almost like being a relief pitcher without a lot of time to prepare, to come in and try to put something together as quickly as possible to meet the needs of students to get through the spring. We were in a survival mode. Quite frankly, we were, there was a lot of change. There was a lot of non-direction, direction, non-direction. And again, we might get some guidance and then it would change. So we were really trying to just stay ahead of that a little bit and try to provide a service as best we could to get through the school year. There were many challenges, many duties. You know, we were reconfiguring duties of staff members on the fly, on the go. Obviously, the students' learning was interrupted. We knew that. We were working on trying to still provide a product that was good for the Zillow School District. Students and families were displaced. You know, we did deploy technology to families in the spring, but it was not anywhere near the scale that we have been able to pull off this fall. Shift in our teaching and learning model. Most of our teachers hadn't been trained in a model that was a distance learning model, and that, you know, that's just the nature, and we weren't alone. I mean, everybody in our state was in that mode, and so those are things that we had to learn and have a shift and a change as we provided services in the spring. Activities, I can tell you, having a high school senior last year, or any of us that have students in the school, public school setting, in the setting, students lost activities. That was hard to deal with for a lot of folks. You know, we tried to, you know, some of the things that we had to provide for families, you know, just the food service, different things. Please mute. Karen, can you mute that by chance?
I'm trying to find them and I can't.
Good.
Sorry.
But, you know, outreach to our community was a big part of this stuff that we had, that we were making, trying to make an impact in our community, whether it be food service, distribution, or like we said, the deployment of technology to whatever it may have been. The new normal was different. We all faced a new normal. Our staff on campuses or off campuses, depending on if it was our teaching staff or classified staff, We had a variation of people on and off campus. And those were all things that were hard for all of us. And when we left in June, and we knew that we had to up our game, so to speak, and talk about what we were going to do in the fall. Distance Learning 2.0 was going to look a lot different than what we did in the spring. And I think as a parent, if you experience that, you've experienced that transition, I hope. Is it perfect? Nothing's perfect, folks. Nothing's perfect, but I will tell you that we have put a lot of time and effort in, and it started back, it started that March weekend, but it really started as we progressed to try to make sure that we were developing plans at some point when we reopened. We didn't know exactly what it might look like. We had community Zooms in July. We talked to we talked to our staff in July. We did all those things, planning and thinking about what would reopening be like in August. Would it be a distance model again? Would it be a hybrid model? Would we be in-person learning, full out traditional model? So, those things are all things that we've had to discuss and continually change as we move forward. We're trying to be proactive when we do that because it's a constant change. We're addressing that. I've tried to, and I've tried to make an analogy of it's like throwing darts at a dartboard in the dark sometimes, because sometimes the guidance we're getting, we're trying to stay ahead of that and make sure we're following the guidelines that are set forth for us. But we have made a commitment in the district for putting resources. We said we wanted to do a better job, and I think we knew that. Most districts would tell you that they were in that survival mode in the spring. So we did really want to commit resources. Mr. Charbonneau has been an integral part in that as our distance learning coordinator, and he has really helped us lead our staff and get more professional development for our staff and bring about a sense of togetherness with the things that we're doing, whether it's our Schoology learning platform or whatever it may be. We put a lot of effort into making those things better. And we've tried to improve our communication. We've tried to be transparent about what we're doing. We do know there's a focus on students that are missing out on their social and emotional at this point, and not only students but staff. We've tried to really look at that as a focus for our staff. We've tried to have more outreach for students, and whether it be in an advisory type activity by secondary folks, or it may be our outreach team at the lower levels, or whatever it may be, we've really looked at some of those things to focus in on those things that will provide services for students. And the teaching and learning process has been streamlined. We're really trying to make the model work that we're in right now. And we're going to talk about really what's next. That's why you're all on this call tonight. You want to know probably, hey, we told the community that October 8th, we were going to make a decision no later than October 8th, what we may do moving forward. And that's really some of the things we want to talk about too, and let you know where we're at as a district. But I do want you to know there has been a transformation, if you will, from spring to where we're at. We've had a lot of positive comments about that. And we know that there's still work to be done as far as continuing to hone in on those practices that work and make it better for our students. Our delivery of services needs to continue to be top of the line. I don't know, Justin, if you wanted to mention anything about this or just move into
Well, no, I was just going to say, I kind of mentioned before, we learned a lot from the spring. We learned what was good and what was bad. I think today, being able to present our fall meeting, and I see some folks on here who come to our parent meetings on a regular basis when they're in person, and we were hitting roughly 5 to 7, and now we're hitting in the 90s. So there is good to take away from this scenario, what we can learn from. So hosting meetings in this fashion may be a benefit to our community, so more can attend. We learned that some blended learning approaches may be beneficial to our students, and kind of keeping that as an engaging process from the fall. We also learned, hey, we got to do things differently if we have to do this again. So a lot of scratching of our heads moved into, okay, what does this mean? And let's put it into action. You have, again, I think Doug mentioned Jeff Charbonneau kind of lean the ideas with distance learning with his experience and background. You couple that with James Howard, our tech department lead, was able to complement some of that to make sure we were ready for what was to come. And then we're actually doing it. You know, we're actually, I mean, I'm going to say, I think we're doing a good job. It may be hard, it may be a struggle for some families to get this done, but if we're in this model, we're doing a pretty good job. And I want to commend our staff in this environment, and they work their tails off. They're here late at night in the evenings getting this done. They're doing some stuff at home. So if you have a chance to interact with some of our staff, if it's worth mentioning that they've done a really good job getting our kids in a position to learn in this environment. And I also want to thank you as a community. It does take a village, right? You know, to raise our children. You're right alongside with us. It's not easy. You're probably having to, you know, probably going to work or you know, whatever your situation is, and you're having to find time and carve that out to work with your children academically. I mean, I know that I do. I work, my wife works. We get home, we do dinner, and then we go start doing academics. And that's a different routine for us. It's hard. Sometimes we're at 8:30 at night finishing up to make sure they're ready for the next day. But just, you all should pat yourselves on the back as parents, as community members. We are definitely in this together. Kudos to you.
What's next? Well, I wish we could give you some definitive answers, and if you want definitive answers, you're probably not going to get them tonight. But I will tell you this: at this point, as we set today, September 22nd, we are going to continue with distance learning right now, 2.0, and continue to provide a service that's going to get better and better as we move on. We are in continual collaboration with the Department of Health. That's almost like a daily occurrence. OSPI leadership, our ESD, our regional colleagues. I meet with Mr. Aaron, and I meet with superintendents, our colleagues, 2 to 3 times a week in our region, which encompasses 5 counties. So it's not just Yakima County. We are constantly reaching out, meeting with folks to again, we are getting guidelines. We want to make sure that we're following the things that we need to do to possibly get back on campus. And I'm going to tell you, we want to be back on campus. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We are planning right now for a hybrid model of some type of in-person learning instruction to happen in the Zillow School District. When and how that will happen, I can't tell you. I can't give you those specifics tonight, but what I will tell you is, if I know many of you have followed the media closely, you've probably seen things in today's media about either other school districts in our area potentially opening fairly soon, or the Department of Health coming out saying that they are going to potentially give us some more guidance early next week. Those things are all in the works. And again, we're talking with our board of directors about these things, because we have to follow the guidelines and the recommendations of our local health department. Nothing we can do, we can't just, nothing we can do without their guidance, and we're working closely with those folks. We are looking right now, we're going to talk a little bit about this, and Mr. Aaron can chip in, but we're going to get a survey out to our community members soon. Might be as early as late in the week, but we really need to figure out, who would be back on campus in a hybrid model. We're going to still continue to have a distance model as a portion of a distance model as an option. We understand that is something that a lot of people support. In our initial surveys that we did in the summer, we got a lot of good feedback, but we need to really get a handle on the feedback and see where our community is at. There are some things that we've talked about in our models. For a hybrid model, we talked about an A-B cohort, meaning that you would bring in an A group potentially 2 days a week, have a virtual day, and then bring a B group in the last 2 days of the week, something like that, full days, if that was an approach. We also believe an AM PM cohort could work, meaning that students would get instruction every day on a shorter time frame, maybe about a 2.5 hour time frame, if that was an option that our staff and our community supported. Then you could get kids in here on a daily basis potentially. There'd be a shortened time in the morning for an AM group. You'd have some cleaning opportunities in the middle of the day, and then another cohort coming in the PM. So they're just those are really the 2 big cohort type hybrid models that we're looking at this time. And again, there are a ton of things, of factors that go in with each of those models. A hybrid model is the hardest thing to pull off of anything. It would be great if we could go from a distance model and pivot right into a full in-person model, but we don't believe that's going to happen. We just don't think that's going to happen. So like I mentioned before, there would be a distance learning option component that would still be maintained in this based on from our surveys, and we'll continue to get information when we put the survey out. But we heard loud and clear from our community there would be members in our community that would not feel safe bringing their kids back. We've heard both sides, and so we would still have a distance learning option available. What that would look like, I'm not sure, and some of it is based on the grade levels, the building level. Obviously, secondary is a little different than the elementary level, primary level. So we know that those are all factors that we have to consider as we're looking at this. And honestly, I think we're going to get guidance from the DOH at some time that's going to tell us it's going to be a phased-in approach. We believe that would probably be the best scenario anyway, that you would start on a systematic approach, maybe a smaller setting, maybe it would be the elementary level, and you would start smaller, and then maybe you would maybe be a K5, P5 type setting, and then you would move into a 6-8 model, that they would then maybe after a certain amount of time, by recommendation from the DOH, that they would start on a hybrid model, and then the high school may be the last one to fall and to get into that model. So those are all things we're working around the clock on. We've really pressed our administrative team, our union leadership, our folks in the trenches that work every day with kids, and really looking to try to look at the best option for the Zillow School District. So we are going to reach out. We are going to reach out soon, very soon, to all our parents, our families, and try to get as much accurate information as we can. When we did this in the summer, we might have gotten 400 responses out of our 1,200, our 800, 900 families, whatever it may be. We are going to really try to work hard to get everybody's input as much as possible, because we need to know, hey, if we have transportation, would I ride a bus? If we have a hybrid model, would I take part in in-person learning? Would I take part in distance learning? All those things are things that we have to have as close, we have to identify those needs so we can make the best decision for the district on what our model would look like. And so those are things that we're thinking about. Like I said, it's a everyday thing. We meet with, we would have to have a plan to our Department of Health previous, and it would have to be stamped good to go before we could ever do the hybrid model. So those are things that we are, obviously, whatever our progression is, we are going to progress as we can towards that full traditional model when we get kids back on campuses. But there are a lot of, it's just not as easy as saying, yeah, we're going to do it. We know that we want to do that, but there's a lot of factors that go into that. So we're going to welcome questions. Justin, anything else you want to mention just about?
I just want to clarify, make sure that everybody knows, similar to how we did registration through Skyward this fall, we're going to put out this, whatever you want to call it, registration for
survey may not be the right term. I don't know.
Right. Just for hybrid. It's going to go out in the relatively near future through Skyward. It'll be similar to the forms that you completed online, and then we can pull and generate reports from the information you provided and categorize it however we need to better understand our scenario. So just kind of look for that. We're probably going to go out earlier than DOH would even make an announcement, and it's not because we plan to do anything relatively soon. It's because we want to know the depth that we have to go in planning in every facet of the school system is so great that we need as much time as possible. I don't care if they tell us we can do it in January. If we knew now what our students and families needed or wanted, it would be beneficial to have that time to prepare for it. So we're kind of going to push the envelope to get that out there, better understand. We've lived this distance learning environment. You know how it works for your child. You know how it works for your family situation. So maybe learning from that, maybe you've changed your mind since we asked those questions in the summer. So look for that. Share it if you can with other community members. That's how it's going to work. We'll do a good job communicating. We'll have it in multiple languages so everybody has that opportunity. So because we want 100% participation in that so that we get a true representation of our community wants and needs. I will say too that, you know, we haven't landed on anything yet. We've got a lot of ideas. You got 8 administrators in the district that talk, you know, on a regular basis, and we all have different ideas of how things should work. We've done a bit of outreach to our staff to kind of see where they're at right now, what they're thinking. We've opened up that door for communication. Let us know how you're feeling. We really need to just understand the situation before we move any further forward. So hopefully through our communications, our outreach, we're going to get that information that we need. And the idea is we in time, we're going to be in a traditional model. I mean, I don't anticipate us sticking in this for long term. So what is that progression? When does that happen? We're going to learn more, and we do follow the DOH's guidance, the recommendations that they provide, and we try to stick as closely to that as we can. But there's a little wiggle room for autonomy for a district in regards to the DOH's recommendations. So just help you maybe understand what we're going through. And I could tell you, Doug and I and others, and stay up at night thinking of things that, how are we going to do this? What's going to happen here? This is not easy. This is very, very complicated. We hope that you're patient with us, and you hope that we understand we're not going to probably give everybody what they want. It's not going to be perfect for your scenario. We have to generalize as much as we can to make the best impact across the district. Hopefully, if you view some of the decisions we make, how we move forward with that lens, it may help you, become less frustrated with us, have less anxiety with what's to come. We're trying to make a collective approach with that. So just, if you have questions, concerns, this is a great opportunity to do it. You got both of our attention right now. We can do our best to answer, but you can always email us. You can always call us with any of that information. I'll put our emails in the chat as well. So
Justin, and I would just echo a little bit too, is there are very, very many layers to this thing, as you know. Every time one decision is made, there's another layer, there are other impacts to the district. And I want to go back and and say and again reiterate something you just mentioned, is it's very important to know that we're trying to make the best decisions we can for the Zillow School District. Not one building, not one family, not we're trying to make the best educated decision we can. And so and again, as you know, some things change, and again, sometimes things change hourly, daily, and so we have to be cognizant of that. And I think I said this in the summer pretty loud and clear, is I'm not that there's a sense of urgency here. There is a sense of urgency in some capacity if the Department of Health lessens restrictions, but at the same time, I don't want to jump into something and be wrong. I want to make sure that we've thought through all the factors, we've thought through everything, and we can do it effectively and safely, and those kinds of things. So those things are things that we're going to look at. There are, again, as I mentioned, just a lot of things that go into a day. I mean, the instruction piece is the easiest thing to deal with. And then you start throwing the peripheral stuff in there, like food service, potentially, transportation, staffing, all those kinds of things are things that people don't actually probably see on a regular basis. And those are things that we've got to talk about a little bit and decide. And again, I think we're going to answer questions now.
We got a few done.
You've got one in there about, can you elaborate on the communication plan expected? Again, and it may come before October 8th. I think at that point, we're gonna gather as much data as we can before the 8th. Soon. We're gonna be looking at the recommendations from the DOH when they come out, and we're gonna make some decisions. We'll probably have some community outreach, some Zooms, whatever it may be, to try to get word out and have some Q&A time, or if it's if it's information that's sent out, if it's information on our website, whatever it may be. So I think those are all things. I can't really give you a direct what we really would like to do. And if you look on our website, you can look at our reopening plans that were initially made. We're going to put all that information on our website. Anything that we can get you that will help you And any questions, I'm going to open that up again. When Justin mentioned that strictly an email or a phone call, those things are very valuable for us to hear your thoughts also.
So
I think I saw a question about repeat what guidance. The DOH, we anticipate, are going to give us guidance in Yakima County for schools when they could potentially open back up in a hybrid model. That's what we think may come from them. I can't guarantee that they're going to do that, but we've been getting word that potentially soon they're going to give some more guidance for the public school sector on when they could effectively open up in a hybrid model.
and we think it's going to be next week, just based on the way communication's coming out. But we can't guarantee it, but we think it's going to be next week when they'll make a formal announcement on that. There's some other questions. The playground in ZIS looks great. Awesome. Has the building updates changes for 6th grade started yet? There were not really major changes that we kind of flirted with the idea of making some shifts with some of the room configurations and whatnot. After we analyzed it a little bit more, there wasn't a necessary need to make major changes. We could facilitate the shift with the current classroom configuration. So right now, no, there hasn't been any major shifts done. Mr. Charbonneau has made plans, moving staffing around, how staff would be, how we would need to put staff in different roles to kind of make the program work for 6 through 8. So all those pieces are in play, and it's actually very doable at this time. So when we get to that point, we'll be good to go. Kristen Leslie, did you already say what level of engagement we have at distance learning? Okay, so we've been checking attendance, and that's a loose term when we're looking at a distance model, because attendance is measured by engagement or doing school work. We were flirting around 96% across the district early on. We haven't analyzed specifically that number, but we have seen a continual rise in the logging in of Schoology and engaging with Schoology over the last, or actually over the first 4 weeks of school. So what that means is kids and families are figuring out, learning how to log on a consistent basis, getting on and engaging with the learning activities. So it's real positive information for us, is that this is working and we're building. We're not regressing. We're not starting off and doing a good job and then all of a sudden everybody goes away. We continue to build on the momentum with our program. And now we're getting a lot of questions and my stuff's moving like crazy here. Hold on one second. We get to where we need to be. Have we got any info on driver's training, Mr. Burge?
Yeah, I'll just give you a quick update on that. Is that we have been approved for traffic safety program for the 2021 school year, but we don't typically have a class until the spring of 2021. In February is when we start, or March, and it goes into the spring, ends in May. Then we have another course in June. So at this point, depending on what happens, we will have protocols in place to have those classes. Now, if you're not in a hybrid model or an in-person learning model, that may change, but we've had initial approval for those because there are some health and safety protocols that have to be, things that have to be done a little differently. For example, you can't have numerous, multiple students in the car, those kinds of things. So there are just different factors. And we did get approval from the Department of Transportation and finished those that chose to. Many are still, they're not finished yet, but they're finishing from last spring because they didn't have their driving completed, and we're working on that. We had to get special clearance from the DOT. So again, that has been there. We're working on that. I see some questions in there about, is it the Yakima Health District or the State Department of Health that gives us guidance? We really go with the local health authority. The Department of Health will work with the local counties, but each county is a little different. So we work directly with the local health affiliation because they have the ability to say, yes, you can be in school, or no, you cannot be with us. So we work directly with Yakima County and Dr. Everson, who is our local health official that we talk with weekly. So that's who we work with. And they get guidance from the State Department, but we're working closely with our folks in Yakima County.
Sorry, I'm responding to some individual questions. Want to talk about West Valley? They kind of they announced their hybrid model. Has theirs been analyzed by our district for potential replication? I'm not sure if you mentioned that. I was responding to some individual comments.
I would just tell you that I haven't, other than talking with their superintendent and their leadership team, I haven't really analyzed what they're doing exactly. It's sometimes hard to compare a district their size to our size because it's totally a different maybe configuration. Their elementary schools, our elementary school is not a typical configuration. And so there are some of those factors. They actually have I believe a 9th grade campus too, if I'm not mistaken. They just have some unique things in their district. Definitely would we look at that. I think everybody's looking to folks in our region. We have a lot of schools in ESD 105 that are not in our county, but are in Kittitas County, Thorpe, and Kittitas, Grant County, Royal City, and ESD 105. There are different counties that are already in a hybrid model. So we have talked a lot with those superintendents on our weekly calls and trying to get as much information, glean as much as we can from them. So yeah, we're going to use and look at all things. We work really close with Lower Valley schools too in our region because we're similar. We're going to look at folks that are similar in our size and some of those things and take some of the things that, what might work in another district may not work quite as well for this, for our district. So we've got to be careful about, we have 6 bus routes, or we've typically had 6 bus routes. Some school districts, even not as big as us, have 13, depending on their size of area that they have. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors that don't equate, but we've obviously going to look at all things and consider everything to make our product a safe product, but also a quality service for our kids.
And I recognize that some folks are referencing West Valley and the DOH. Although I think, maybe they're brave or know more than we know officially. I think we're being cautious and careful to not jump the gun on anything. I think it's always good to plan ahead. That's really what we're focused in on is, okay, if this is a potential, which we knew was coming anyways, honestly, we know that the next step would potentially be hybrid. Now, when that happens, we don't know. So we're just trying to be proactive now that the rumor mill's going, puts a little stress on us. West Valley kind of going, which I don't know what they know or what confirmation they got ahead of any of the other districts. But that's kind of on them for that.
And just to give you a example, and again, I'm not going to muddy the water any more than I need to, but Yakima School District, if you read the article today, they had already committed to a distance learning model until January 25th, 2021. So they were not going to go back, until after their semester time. That's what they've told their parents. That's what they've told their community. And if things change, and schools around the county start changing, well, that obviously puts a lot of pressure on them. So, West Valley and Yakima side by side. So you can understand the intricacies of this and how difficult it is because even though a county and a Department of Health may work or may have some recommendations, it's still very difficult to navigate and to put plans in place. So I want you to, I'm not going to say we're going to do it as quickly and efficiently as possible. And when we figure that out, we're going to communicate it effectively. I mean, the bottom line is I would rather do something right if it was a week later than something wrong and rush into it. We've got to think about the health and safety of our students and our staff, and also and be able to do it in a positive manner.
Doug, I'm going to take this next question that was presented to everybody, but actually somebody kind of individually messaged me asking me, are we phasing in groups? How are we starting with folks with the highest need? So I definitely want to be transparent in this. We actually have had students on campus since day one. So what the state asked districts to do is kind of, and what they deemed it as an educational justice program. They looked at students furthest away from educational equity, given their situation or their challenges and barriers. It was pretty obvious in our district and in the work that we did in the spring that some of our students with high needs in our special education department were those who needed to be on site to receive some form of education. It really we weren't able to duplicate anywhere close to what we presented in a school setting in that distance model for those students. We did a lot of outreach, a lot of calling, a lot of consulting. So we actually started with students on site day number 1, very small groups. They were coming 2 to 3 days a week. We rotated through. We provided transportation for those who needed it. All health and safety requirements were followed. It's been productive and it's been safe. That's been a huge plus. As we've evolved, we've actually started today with other students who are either struggling with attendance to the instruction that their teachers were providing, or they were losing ground academically. We brought groups of students in a very small number from our general education population to support their learning because it wasn't successful or they were having challenges at home. Now we offered that to kind of a wide group, a varying group across the district. We had folks tell us, no, we're staying at home. And so we're finding alternative ways to help support them. But then we had others who definitely wanted to be on site. It was so nice for some of our staff to work with students today. It was our bus drivers were very appreciative to interact with our students. We had some teachers and paraeducators that got to work with small groups of students. That's why we're here. This is why we do that job. So it was nice to see. As we move, and our plan was to evolve those services and to be able to handle in a safe manner. The DOH said that we could have 5 students in a room with the adults needed to help support them academically. So we followed that. Hybrid is that next level. It's not stuck to the 5 kids in a room with the adults you need. It's that what can you fit in a room that's physically appropriate with 6 feet distancing. So that's kind of the evolution we've been building up towards that. From what we understand, that looking at West Valley's plan and the talk around our communities are, they're going to start with the elementary age students first. That's the group that would come in, and then they build up as we go. So we're starting with high-risk groups, kids who need extra help and support. And then, if we shift to hybrid, we're going to do that according to the DOH's recommendations. Just kind of in a nutshell, a couple questions came up about that. How did we decide? So how did we decide? Great question. We knew that was going to be a challenge. So what we did is we actually interview or put a request out to our general ed staff. Who's struggling? Who can you not get to? Who's having a hard time with the learning? So they made recommendations to what we call the outreach team, which is a intervention specialist, counselors, a couple administrators who have headed that team, who then used a rubric that analyzed risk factors. We looked at if the student's in a special program, if they're a student of poverty, if they are, if their home does not have connectability. So there was a bunch of factors that were rated, and it was clear cut. If they were in this, if they had these things, or they were in these type of programs, they got more points. If they didn't have connection to the internet, they got more points. Those with the greatest point value were the first students we approached. I think with anything, we try to be fair and equitable in our approach. It was a systematic way to evaluate and give a number to kids who needed the greatest support. If we expand that program, we wouldn't be looking at just the top tier of those in need. We'd probably be able to kind of slide that scale over and say who fit into the next set of numbers or that scale. Let's bring those in. And I can share that if you like. If someone wants to see that scale, that rating system, shoot an email off to me. I can definitely attach it in an email and let you kind of view that for yourself. Very transparent. It was straightforward in how we had to work through that to decide. And one thing we know that parents, I mean, I would want my child on site. To be honest with you, if I could request that and get them on site, I would, because I think they would like that. They would benefit from that. But one thing I'll tell you, we weren't taking parent requests because some families pay more attention to what's going on in the school system. Again, that'd be a non-fair and equitable way to kind of approach that model. So definitely trying to go from the teacher side, how they're viewing the work that's being done by those students. How often is being relooked at? Great question. We're starting this program off for 2 weeks. So we started this week and we'll do it next week with the same group of students. What we're hoping to do is provide them that lift they need to do well, and we kind of shove them back into their environment, and hopefully we've overcome those barriers. We're going to reanalyze another group of students starting next week, probably towards the end of this week actually, to see what our next group is. So just so you understand, it is a huge undertaking to actually get the list down, the referrals from our teachers, analyze the group's needs by rating theirs on the scale, calling home, talking to them about the potential of bringing them on site, working on the transportation side to see if it can work and how we can get them in on the specific times, recalling home to get commitment. It is a very big task for a very, what you may view as a very easy thing to do, bring some kids in here and there. It's not easy at all. So let me, pretty much essential risk factor for education. Yeah, it's pretty much what's the essentials and what are the risk factors. Pretty much the guidance from OSBI created the rubric. A lot of our districts around our region are using the same type of rubric system. Let me get to this phase. Okay, so a question about how do we help, with families. If we go to hybrid, we are really, our first breakdown of students who are declaring for on-site is families. We know that we have to coordinate so that families come back together. It would not work if you had an older sibling at the high school who actually supported right now their younger siblings' learning experience at home. If we were to put them on different schedules, that one's in and one's out, one's in at school and one's at home, it won't work when the younger one's at home by themselves. We know that. So we're going to plan ahead. We're going to look at family situations and bring those groups in together if we get to that point.
And that wouldn't, it wouldn't matter if it was an AB cohort or an AM PM, we would be on the same, because we understand families are across buildings. That's something that is we've already started to pull our data and analyze that, and principals will be looking at that also.
So some more questions about the process. Are kids' grades being looked at? Yes, definitely being looked at. It was kind of misleading right off the bat because we had so few assignments due. So if a student missed 1 or 2 assignments, it may not be because they're not academically able or having access compared to others. So they might have had a negative grade reflected in Skyward, but it might not have been a true reflection of maybe what's going on. So it was that was a hard piece to look at and really put a true value to it. So yeah, great question again too, is if families or students don't feel comfortable returning, we are definitely going to have a distance track for those students if we go to hybrid, if we go to traditional. We've kind of made that commitment early on based on the first survey we did with families, but we are definitely going to be committed to helping families with a distance learning model throughout. So everybody should feel safe and comfortable.
So again, we're going to reflect that in the survey that we put out soon to you so that you can identify the model that you would prefer and potentially whether you need transportation if you were going to come back or distance learning. So we're going to do that. And those are things that we have to get sooner than later. So it can help us in our planning stages. We understand that. We know that that's a difficult thing. I know you want to make decisions. We're trying to give enough lead time that we can at least. That's why we're talking about this now. We're talking about this with our board. We've already started those conversations with our instructional staff and our classified staff. We've got to get ahead of this thing, because I look at this as being honestly a 2 to 3, maybe a 2 to 4 week turnaround before we could even be ready to do anything based on recommendations from the DOH also, because there's like I said before, there's so many things. We can't just turn the switch on a Friday night and expect it to be ready on the next week. So I think that's important too, that you have to understand that there are a lot of planning and preparation as we move forward to be ready for in-person in a hybrid model.
So a couple more questions came through. One about the highly capable program. Traditionally, we've held a district-wide meeting about highly capable program offerings. Just given the nature of the start of the year, we didn't want to add something that was going to be another thing to learn and think about for families. So we decided to go a different approach. You should be, if you haven't already been communicated with by your students' mentor, it's either Ben Arian or Tammy Lewis. They'll be working with you and your student and the teacher and the principal directly in the really near future, or if it hasn't already been done, there's also a letter going home. I apologize for that being kind of pushed off, but we're trying to manage emotions and things to learn or to understand as we went through. We think it's a good time as we got the pace down. We kind of got into a groove. It's probably the right time to kind of push on that right now. How many high school students are on site right now? So if you're looking at our high needs special ed group, there's roughly 4 or 5 that attend since the beginning. We've just added, there's 4 and another 7, so about 11 more that came to the high school today as the first time. The distance track have live instruction. Will the distance track have a live instruction? That is another challenge for us. So, ideally we would like a live component, with one of our staff members on the user end. So the students would have one of our instructors provide that distance learning. Really, we need to understand the scope of our needs. So the numbers of families and students that need to stay home, that will help kind of dictate what goes on. There are platforms that we could utilize. If you remember what Edgenuity is from, if you had a secondary student, we utilized that in the spring of last year. That's an option. But if we can provide the live instruction with our staff, that's always a goal. But we have to learn how that is managed and what we can and cannot do given our resources, to be honest with you. Is there an active PTO? There are at each building. I would encourage you to reach out to the building principals. I know that they're going to have, kind of kick off their PTO meetings that are going to be building specific. They kind of did that at the beginning of the year when they had their principal night. That's kind of the opening PTO kind of opportunity. I know it was geared more to how we're going to start school, but those will be coming as well. I'll write that down actually and make sure our principals kind of have that on the radar and communicate those meetings. Will you be sending a new survey out to the parents? Yeah, so we're going to send out that new survey. I don't know when you jumped on, but we did talk about early on, we're going to utilize Skyward, similar to how we did the online registration process. Skyward will have a form that you can click on, and we haven't decided on the terminology, maybe a survey, or maybe like the in-person registration process and kind of filling out what each individual person needs. We'll have that available, and we'll know what you want, student by student, family by family.
And we understand, I understand. I hope you're patient with us and at least developing the plan. I mean, we've got plans like, in our heads, and we've been thinking about this stuff since, like we've talked about since March. And so our team is working hard to try to develop these things and work with all the players, all the stakeholders, because we know it's that important. And again, we're going to do it as quickly as we can within reason. There might be some logical times that we would bring a building on if we could, just based on timelines, semesters, potentially some of those things are, just we need to look at all that. There's so many things to this that we need to look at. So we'll continue to do that. We'll do our best to get information out to you. Like I said, be looking soon for a survey or for the information that we need back. We're going to continue to keep those communication lines open and make sure that you're in the know, and we'll put some stuff on our website as much as we can and get things out with our normal communication as best we can, so you're aware of the things we need to do and what to do.
And we got one more. Okay, so really good question, and a challenging question at that. So if a student comes back on site and they have cold and flu symptoms, will they have to go get COVID testing? We know when they get back together with the weather changing, colds are going to be cropping up. So I'm going to let Mr. Burge handle that one. How about that?
Yeah, I figured you'd let me do that one now. No, we're going to follow the DOH guidelines, and right now we can't dictate a person going to get tested at this point. And so, you know, we will follow the guidelines if they can be on campus. We will have protocols in place with attestations for parents, also temperature scans at this point, unless, you know, things change. If we were in a hybrid model tomorrow, that's what we'd be doing. That's what we do with our kids now. We do some type of attestation and with our staff and temperature scans. And if they don't meet that criteria, they're not on campus. They aren't allowed on campus. So we understand there are going to be very many challenges. The superintendents that I've talked to at this point that are currently in person learning in a hybrid model, I'll tell you what they tell us. The biggest challenge they have is the attestation piece and the screening piece of getting kids on campus. When they get past all those things and the other guidelines, the Department of Health has things in place with isolation rooms that we will have to put kids in if they're not, you know, so they can't intermix with kids if they don't meet the screening guidelines. There's all those factors that are in there that we already would have to follow from the OSPI and DOH guidelines. So there's just, again, I don't have enough time to explain those to you, but hopefully in our communication to parents at some point, you're going to get to know as much as you want to know about this stuff. Everybody is dealing with that. There's not a lot of wiggle room. You don't have wiggle room, and we don't want to have wiggle room with that. We need to make sure that we follow the guidelines set forth. There is specific work with the DOH that we would do on contact tracing and things if we had suspected cases or cases on campuses. And so again, we don't even control that. That's controlled by our local health department.
Any other questions for us or comments?
We're here all night. No, I'm kidding. Again, I'm very thankful. We had a great, group tonight. Tons of participation. We'll put this on our website. So if you have, folks that could benefit from some of the information we talked about, I definitely make sure that you let them know that it will be there probably tomorrow on our website, and make sure that we will. And again, I really encourage you to ask, call, email, ask us questions. I'm going to be honest. We don't have every answer. I hope you don't expect us to have every answer right now. Things change so rapidly that we are going to try to stay ahead of this thing and do our best. But we understand, and I've been very transparent with our staff members. We've tried to be as transparent as we can be. We don't have all the answers. We are going to pivot and adapt and do what we need to do as needed to get through this thing. So that's where we're at. We are going to continually evaluate where we're at, analyze what we can do, what we can't do, what guidelines we have, and move forward accordingly. So that's where we're at, and working with our board. I'll tell you, our board of directors, we've got great board of directors that have a vast amount of experience, and again, we're working closely with them and a great staff, with a lot of experience, and we're trying to work with all, like I said before, all the stakeholders to make sure we have a product that is great for our community, but also safe for our community. So that's where we're at. We'll continue to keep you informed, and again, welcome any input that you can give us, and we'll be looking for that information out soon, so you can get us information back, so we can start really looking at the specific needs for our buildings and our kiddos.
Thank you, everybody. A lot of good questions. We'll be reaching out to everybody very, very soon to get some more info. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.